when my wife's cheating ruined our marriage and exposed the dark truth about her new life. Hi, my name's James, and I'm 34. A year ago, if someone told me I'd be here talking about my marriage falling apart, I'd have laughed. But life has a way of messing things up when you least expect it, and that's how I ended up here. I met Megan in college. She was smart and funny, and could make people smile. We were young and full of dreams, thinking love would see us through anything. For a while, it was true. After college, we got married, moved into an apartment, and started our life together. It wasn't perfect, but we were happy, or so I thought. I've always put in the work, even if I don't have some fancy degree or high-paying job. I give it my all, and for the last 10 years, I've been working as a mechanic. It might not be the most glamorous job, but it's honest work that I'm proud of. My girlfriend loved me for that dedication, and she never cared about money or status. Things started to change 2 years ago, though, when she got a job in marketing. It was a dream job for her, and I was happy for her. But it also meant a new lifestyle, nicer clothes, going to fancy restaurants, weekend trips with coworkers. The problem was, I just couldn't afford it financially or emotionally. That led to some tension between us. I noticed Megan was pulling away from me, but at first it was kind of subtle. Over time, though, it got more obvious. She'd come home from work later and later, saying she was at meetings or events, talking about her new coworkers who drove fancy cars and went on vacations in Europe. It felt like I was the outsider in our relationship. She wasn't interested in me anymore. I tried to talk about it with her, but she always deflected, saying I was overreacting or didn't understand. It wasn't just about the late nights and expensive dinners. Megan started criticizing me for everything. My job wasn't good enough, and the money I made wasn't enough for her. She wanted more and more, but I just couldn't give it. The more I worked, the further apart we drifted. Then one night, things changed. It was Wednesday, and it seemed like yesterday. For weeks, Megan had been acting distant, barely talking to me except about bills and schedules. I decided to surprise her with a special night out. I picked up her favorite food and set the table with candles, waiting for her to arrive. When she finally showed up, she looked different. Her hair was messed up, her makeup smudged, and her eyes had an unfamiliar look. She shrugged off my question about where she'd been, saying she'd just been with friends. Something inside me made me push for more details, and that's when the truth came out. Megan had been seeing someone else, a guy from work who made twice my salary and could provide her with the lifestyle she desired. She didn't try to hide it. In fact, she seemed relieved to finally let me know. She said she was tired of living from paycheck to paycheck, struggling and being with me. I couldn't believe it. The woman I'd loved for so long, the one I'd built a life with, she was leaving me because she thought I didn't make enough money. It was like a punch to the gut. The air got sucked out of me. I asked if she still loved me, and she hesitated. That told me everything. She didn't go that night, but she slept in a different room, and for the first time, I felt totally alone. The woman who I thought was going to be with me forever had betrayed me. All because I wasn't rich. It was the start of a really tough time, and I had no idea what was to come. The next few days were a bit of a blur. Me and Megan hardly spoke, just living like roommates. I tried to figure out what had happened, how things got so messed up, but the more I thought, the more confused I got. How did we get from being a solid couple to this? Why did everything have to be about money? I couldn't concentrate at work. My head was spinning, replaying that night she told me about the affair. It was more than just the betrayal. It was how she casually admitted it, like it was just a natural consequence of me not providing her with the lifestyle she wanted. Each time I thought about it, a wave of anger and confusion and sadness washed over me. I knew I wasn't perfect. I never thought my love and loyalty wouldn't be enough. A week after she confessed, Megan told me she was going. She said she needed some time to sort things out, but I knew better. She was leaving me for somebody else. Those words felt like the death of our relationship, cold and final. I didn't argue. There was no point. She had already made her decision. On the day she packed her bags, I watched from the doorway as she threw her stuff into her car. Suitcase after suitcase went into the trunk, without even a glance in my direction. Our whole life together felt like nothing more than a bunch of stuff she could easily leave behind and move on. And that's exactly what she did. That first night in our now empty home, I sat in the dark, staring at the walls, feeling numb. It felt like someone else's life, not mine. This was not how it was supposed to happen. We were meant to be strong, but there I was, all alone with a bunch of bills and the knowledge that I had let us down. The next few weeks were tough as hell. Everywhere I looked, There were reminders of Megan. Her favorite mug sitting on the counter, the empty spot in the closet where her clothes used to hang, and the lingering smell of her perfume on the pillow she'd left behind. It was like she was there and not there at the same time. I tried to distract myself with work, but no matter how busy I was, the thoughts wouldn't leave me alone. I wondered where Megan was, if she was happy, if she even thought about me anymore. I knew I shouldn't let those thoughts get to me, but I just couldn't shake them off. The woman I loved more than anything had left me for someone else, and I didn't know how to move forward. Then, one night about a month after she had left, I got a text from Megan. My heart started racing when I saw her name pop up on my phone screen. I was so torn between wanting to throw the phone across the room or desperately wanting to hear from her again. The text was short and to the point. "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. I didn't know what to expect. An apology, maybe? Some explanation that would make everything make sense. But deep down, I knew no explanation would erase the pain she had caused. We met at our old favorite cafe downtown. I got there early, trying to gather my thoughts. But as soon as Megan walked in, everything I had planned to say flew out the window. She looked different. There was a new confidence in her eyes, a lightness I'd never seen before. It made me feel so small and insignificant, like I'd always held her back somehow. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, taking a seat across from me. I nodded, not really knowing what to say. We were both struggling to find words and fiddling with our drinks in an awkward silence. "I just wanted to check on you," she said finally, breaking the quiet. "How are you doing?" "Why," I responded, my tone a little harsher than intended. I was surprised, after everything, that she still cared. She sighed and looked at her hands. "I don't know, I just feel bad about the way things ended." I stared at her, waiting for her to continue, but she stayed silent. She just seemed to feel bad. My anger was starting to build, but I pushed it down. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me losing my cool. "What do you want me to say, Megan?" I asked, keeping my voice level. There was a pause, and I thought maybe she was going to apologize. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I want a divorce." The words hit me like a brick wall. I knew they were coming, but hearing them out loud made them real. There was no turning back now. Our life together, our dreams, were officially over. I nodded slowly, trying not to show how much it hurt. "Okay," I managed to say. She looked relieved, like a weight had lifted off her. I wanted to yell, to know how she could be so calm, but I didn't. I just sat there staring at the woman who had once been my whole world. How had we gotten here? As we said goodbye, it felt like waking up from a bad dream. Reality was harsh and cold, but at least it was real. Maybe I could find my way forward. After our meeting in the cafe, I decided to file for a divorce right away. Megan was already checked out emotionally, so trying to drag the process out would have been bad for both of us. With a heavy heart, I signed the papers, knowing that it was the end of our marriage. There was no going back, it was over. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork and lawyer meetings, as we divided up our few possessions. I didn't fight much, I just wanted it to be over. Megan, on the other hand, wanted every detail sorted out, from furniture to bank accounts. She wanted to put the past behind her and make sure there were no loose ends. Later, I found out that Megan had moved in with a guy named Robert from work. He was rich and successful, and so confident that it's hard to believe people talk about him like he's a hero who rescued Megan from her past. I don't really argue with that because I know he has the money, status, and lifestyle that she wants. I tried to move on, but everywhere I went there were reminders of what I'd lost. My friends didn't ask me to couples dinners anymore, and when they did it felt like a third wheel. Everyone knew about Megan and Robert, and I could see pity in their eyes. It sucked to be reminded of all I didn't have. Then one night, I ran into an old friend, Greg, at a bar. Man, he was there for me through everything. Even during my divorce, he never judged me and had my back. It had been a while since we'd seen each other, and it was good catching up with a few drinks. For the first time in a while, I felt like myself, not defined by my messy marriage or the mistakes I'd made. As we were talking, he brought up my ex-girlfriend, Megan. I tried to change the subject, but he kept talking about her. "I can't believe she left you for that guy, because he has money," he said, shaking his head. "That's so cold." I tried to play it cool. "Well, maybe she just wasn't right for me," I said. Greg leaned in and whispered, "I hear there are some rumors about that Robert guy." "What kind of rumors?" I asked, curious. Greg looked around like he was sharing a secret. "You know, people say he has a bad reputation. Married twice to women he met at work, and they were both successful. He swept them off their feet, then took control of their lives." I frowned. "What do you mean by control?" Greg took a sip of his drink and continued. So, I hear he's not so great, you know? Both his exes have filed restraining orders against him, saying he's controlling and manipulative, even abusive. I was just staring at him, trying to process what he was saying. You don't think Megan knows, do you? He shrugged. Could be. He's great at hiding stuff. But people do talk, and I just thought you should know. Sitting there, trying to process what he'd said, I was totally confused. Megan ditched me for some guy, thinking he could give her the life she wanted. But what if she's wrong about him? What if things with him are worse than with me? I wasn't sure how to handle the information I had. Part of me wanted to confront Megan and tell her the truth. But would she even listen? She already has an opinion about me and our relationship, and I don't want to give advice. Still, it's been bugging me, this thought at the back of my mind. What if Megan makes a big mistake by chasing money and stuff? What if she falls for someone who will totally ruin her life? As the weeks went by, I started checking Megan's social media a lot more than I meant to. I told myself I was just keeping up with her, but really I was looking for any sign that Greg was right. I wanted to know if she was happy with Robert, if he was the man she thought he was. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. All the fancy dinners, weekend trips, and selfies of them looking so happy. They seemed like the perfect couple living the dream that I couldn't give her. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. And then, 6 months after their divorce was final, I got a call from Megan. We hadn't spoken in months, and her voice on the phone made my heart beat faster. I was hesitant, not sure what to say. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling. "James, hi." She sounded nervous too, like she didn't know what to say either. "Hey there, how's it going?" There was a short silence on the other end of the line, and then a deep sigh came through. She said, "We need to talk. I need to tell you something." Her voice sounded different, not as strong and confident as I'd heard it before. It was more vulnerable, like she was someone else. I replied carefully, "Sure. Where do you want to meet up?" We decided to meet at our favorite cafe. When I arrived, Megan was sitting in a booth, clutching a cup of coffee. She looked tired and worn out, with dark circles under her eyes. She seemed thinner than usual. When I sat down, she offered a weak smile and thanked me for coming. There was an awkward silence, like something bad was about to happen. Finally, after what felt like ages, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "James," she said, "I messed up." I was sitting there, staring at Megan, trying to process what she'd just told me. She said, "I made a huge mistake," her voice barely a whisper, cracking with emotion. At first, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask her what mistake she was talking about, but another part of me knew already. I could see the exhaustion and regret in her eyes, the sadness that came from realizing her perfect life with Robert was all a lie. "Megan," I started softly. "What happened?" She brushed away a tear and took a deep breath. "Where do I even start?" she said. I thought Robert was it. He was successful and charming and made me feel so special. But it was all fake. It was all a lie. I stayed quiet, letting her talk, seeing the pain in her eyes. While I wanted to feel satisfied, even validated for everything she'd put me through, all I felt was sadness. Sadness for her. Sadness for what we had once been. Megan took a deep breath and continued. At first, things were great. He was showering me with gifts and taking me on amazing trips, making me feel like I was living in a dream world. But then things changed. He started to control me. She looked at her ring, still on her finger. It started with little things, what to wear, what to eat, who to hang out with. I thought he was just being caring, but it only got worse. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized all the things Greg had said about her were starting to make sense. Hearing them from Megan's mouth made them even more real. He started checking her phone, asking her where she was every minute of the day. If she didn't answer quickly enough, he would get angry. Not just angry, but furious. He would accuse her of cheating and lying, no matter how much she tried to reassure him. One day, they were arguing about something small, and he just snapped. He grabbed her hard, and she fell. For the first time, she was truly scared of him. I was sitting there, fists clenched under the table, trying to keep my anger in check. I couldn't believe what was going on, especially with the woman I love, but I let her talk because she needed to get it all out. That night, I was thinking about leaving him, said Megan, but then I felt so ashamed. I left because I wanted more, and now I'm stuck in this nightmare, trapped and knowing I made a big mistake. She looked at me, tears in her eyes, and said, "James, I'm so sorry for everything. I was so focused on money and the perfect life, and I didn't realize what was important." I wish I had stayed with you, and I know it now." Her words were heavy with pain, and so was the silence between us. It wasn't the happy ending I dreamed of, with Megan realizing her mistake and coming back to me. It didn't feel like a victory, but it was a start. "I don't really know what to say, man," I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. "I understand what you went through, and I'm so sorry about that. But you leaving me completely shattered me. You left not just our marriage behind, but everything we built together. I don't even know if we can ever go back now." Her face crumpled and tears started falling faster. "I know, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just had to tell you how wrong I was." We sat there in silence for what felt like forever. The weight of our failed marriage hung in the air like a ghost that we couldn't shake. Finally, Megan broke the silence. Her voice was a soft whisper. "I'm leaving him." I packed my bags. I didn't know where else to go, so I came to you. "I'm not asking for another chance. I just needed someone to talk to." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. She had no one else. She left me for someone who promised her the world, and now she was here, broken and lost. For once, I felt like I could help. "Stay with me for a few nights, just until you figure things out," I said softly but firmly. Megan looked at me, surprise in her eyes. "James, I'm not giving you a second chance, Meg," I said, cutting her off. "I'm giving you a place to crash for now, that's it. You need to figure your shit out, and I don't want to see you get hurt again. But that's all I can do right now. I'm not ready to forgive yet." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thanks. I know I don't deserve it, but thanks." We stood and I walked her to the door. When we stepped out, a weird calm came over me. She was not the same person I loved, and neither was I. We'd both been changed by that storm, and while I didn't know what the future held, I knew I needed to take control. The days after that were weird. There was a mix of old habits and awkward silences. Megan moved into the guest room, which is usually where guests and family stay. Now it's her home, but it also feels like where my heart broke and trust got destroyed. She did what she promised. She didn't ask for anything other than a place to stay. Most of the time, she kept to herself, staying in her room during the day as she looked for somewhere else to live and thought about what to do next. We had short, polite conversations, sometimes at dinner or when we passed each other in the hall. It was polite, but the weight of the past still hung between us. Despite everything, I still felt all messed up inside. Megan had been the girl I'd loved for years and planned a future with, but seeing her so vulnerable and lost had brought back all those old feelings that I thought I'd put behind me. But there were also the memories of how she had betrayed me and all the nights I spent alone wondering if I was ever good enough. The pain she left behind was still so raw. A week after she moved out, Megan showed up at my door one evening. I was trying to relax after a long day at work and didn't feel like talking, but I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. "Come in," I said, my voice tight as I opened the door for her. She walked in hesitantly, as if she wasn't sure I wanted her there. "I just wanted to tell you, I've found a new place, and I'll be moving this weekend." I nodded, trying not to let her see the turmoil inside me. "That's great. I'm glad you found something," I replied, forcing a smile. Megan stood there, fiddling with her hands for a second. "Hey, I wanted to say thanks for letting me stay here," she continued. "It's been tough for me, and I really appreciate it." "No problem, Megan," I replied, trying to sound cool. "You know I'd never leave you in the lurch, but that doesn't change what happened between us, you know." She winced like my words stung her. I know, she replied. "I'm not expecting anything to change. I just want you to know I'm sorry." I looked at her, and for the first time in forever, I saw the old Megan. The woman who was once my partner, confidant, best friend. Something clicked in my mind. I realized I'd been carrying around anger and pain, letting them shape me and dictate my actions. "No more." "You know what, though," I said, softly. "I believe you. I really do. And I mean it when I say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for not being the kind of husband you deserve, for not noticing how unhappy you've been. But we can't change the past. We've both grown and changed." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I don't expect anything from us, but I want you to be happy," she said. "I hope you find someone who can make you smile." Hearing her say that, it was strange. I'd imagined this moment a lot. Imagined what I'd say if she ever apologized, changed her mind. But in reality, it didn't feel how I thought it would. I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. I just felt tired. "That's what I want for you too," I replied. Truly, we stood there in silence for a while, the air heavy, but not unbearable. It felt like the end of a chapter, and we knew it was time to move forward. The weekend rolled around, and Megan packed up her stuff with no fuss. I helped her haul her boxes to the car, like I did all those months ago when she first left. This time, though, there was none of the anger or resentment, just acceptance. As she was about to go, Megan turned to me and said, "Be careful, James." I said, "You too," and she climbed in her car and took off, leaving me there on the driveway, watching her drive away down the road. I stood there a while, looking at the empty street, letting silence wash over me. For the first time ever, I felt this weird kind of peace. Not the kind that comes from reaching your goals, but the kind from letting go. Letting go of the past, the pain, all the expectations I'd had for myself and for Megan. Because for so long, I'd been holding on to this image of what I thought I needed to be: successful, wealthy, the perfect partner. None of that mattered anymore. So the big question was, what was I going to do with the future? For once, I felt like I had tons of potential. I had no clue what the future would bring, but I knew I was up for whatever it threw at me. Maybe I'd move to a new city, get a fresh start, or just keep doing what I'm doing and see where it takes me. Or maybe I'll stay here and build my life up from scratch, one step at a time. Whatever happens, I'm going to keep pushing forward. That feels like a win to me. As I walked into my house and closed the door behind me, I smiled. I might not know exactly what tomorrow holds, but for now, I'm okay with that. This is my chance to make my own way in the world. If you like such stories, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. It will be the biggest support for me.